And it would seem that we're live. Let's just double check. We're live on the podcast. We are live in the studio. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, welcome back. If you are joining us again, thank you. This is the Life Design Series with me, Stevenson, ya boy, Mr. Stevenson on TikTok, or those who wonder on the podcast. And the Life Design Series is where we are using the design thinking process to systematically make improvements in our lives. So applying and connecting design thinking to research on habits, human habits, and with my knowledge, I suppose if you want to call it a skill, I don't know, to develop curriculum, created a class where we are systematically and consciously approaching making improvements in our life. So this phase that we're in the entire design thinking series. So we finished up with Empathize, understanding people. So like in the class that I teach for the high schoolers, right? They're never designing, well, they're occasionally designing for themselves, but they're usually designing for someone else. So like they have clients. They're pretending to be a designer and they've been hired to improve for that person. So that requires them to get in the mind of whoever their user is, their client or their target audience, and think, okay, what does this person do? How do they do it? Why do they do it? What do they want? How could it be better for them? So it's not like what I think is better. It's what what would be better for them. Now, in this instance, you are the user because you're designing for yourself, right? So you had to take time to think about, well, what do I do? How do I do it? Maybe even why do I do it? And then hopefully that process, if you haven't done it, I really recommend you go back. This is a series. If you haven't done it, I think it's beneficial. If you did do it, I hope it was beneficial. So I hope that you were able to empathize with yourself. And now we're moving from empathize into define. So we're figuring out the problem. I view it more, it's less of the define phase, I think is less of like, we're just figuring out the problem. We're defining what's important to us. We're defining what is worth addressing because not to be like, I don't think this is too negative, but like there's multiple problems in our lives. So, like there isn't just one thing. So I think recognizing, okay, well, this is an aspect of my life that could be improved. And this is what I think is worth improving. And then defining, this is what I want out of this. We're not getting to the idea phase yet. Today, what we're going to be doing, I'll skip to today's objective, is apply the data we collected through the empathize stage. So you should, if you haven't, have a day in the life log and a concept map. I feel like I'm a teacher. And I was like, you should have your homework. And like kids look around like, oh, crap. Again, like I can't tell you what to do. So like if you're doing this stuff, cool. If not, I don't know. I guess you're just listening for fun and you're just taking little bits and chunks and like that's cool. So the steps for today, what we're going to try to accomplish today. Number 1, define what is important to us. Number 2, define areas in which we want to improve. And then number 3, define what we want from that area. Last week, we asked ourselves, and we spent ideally the week asking ourselves, what do we do? We did that with the life concept map and the day in the life log. And then when do we do it? So that kind of goes with the how, right? Like what do I do? How do I do it? So I'm just going to recap. Day in the life log looks like this. You broke your day the goal was to, as the week is going on, that you just, whatever you do, jot it down whenever you do it. So wake up, bam, brush teeth, bam, leave for work, bam. So you start to figure out like, what does my life look like? If a weekday is 5/7 of your life, and generally, I think for the most part, we're doing similar things throughout the week. Obviously, things change. Like you might have to drive your kid to soccer practice on Tuesday, but generally, the week is fairly similar in regards to chunks and sections. So break the day down into chunks. I had my morning, my commute, my work day, my commute, the afternoon, and the evening. And then we highlighted it Needs, shoulds, wants. So things I need to do, things that I should do, things that I want to do. So that was the day in the life log. I feel like I had a burp like on the verge of popping out, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Anyway, the other one was the life map. So break your life down into sections or different aspects of your life. So think of the day in the life log as time. So you're breaking your life, your day into sections. The map is if you could lay out a web of all of the things that make up your life, how would you organize it? I thought it made sense to break it into 4 chunks or 4 categories. If you had more, cool. If you felt there was less, cool. Like, I don't know, maybe you don't have hobbies or maybe you don't have relationships, which is unlikely. But I broke it down into relationships, career, health, and hobbies. So I feel like generally like this breaks down the things that make up your life. The people in your life, the things you do for work, or if you're in school, like the things you do in school, health, and there's like subcategories. So if within health, there's mental health, there's fitness. Fitness is broken down into cardio, strength, flexibility, spiritual health, and then relationships, my family, my friends, my work relationships, breaking life down into sections. Cool. So that was last week. Today we are defining. And defining is figuring out the problem. So by the end of class, I don't know if I like calling it class though. At the end of this episode, maybe you enjoy me calling it class. You're like, oh, actually, I kind of miss school. Maybe. You know, you can still learn. But I was thinking about how deep do I want to go into that rabbit hole, and I have like a little story of essentially a student was like implied that, someone asked like, it was the Jimmy Kimmel thing where it's like name a country. You should, if you haven't seen this, go on YouTube and just YouTube Jimmy Kimmel name a country, where they ask people on the streets, they give them a map and they ask them to literally name a country. This is a whole side tangent. It will not be long. But just this is the teacher in me. And they they switch up the map where the United States is on the right side. So the Pacific Ocean is in the middle, not the Atlantic Ocean. So that messes with people. And there are obviously, like, they probably did a whole bunch and people were able to name like Canada, United States. But there were a fair amount of people that could not name a country. And one of the people said, I haven't been in school in so long, or like implied like, I'm out of school. Like, I'm not learning. And I was like, that is so telling of our culture. Like, you don't need to be in school to learn. Maybe that's something that you want to improve. I don't know. Maybe the thought of like learning something actually excites you. Hopefully you had a good experience with school. I'm not going to spend too much, or I'm done with that. Anyway, so let's reflect. You should have the day in the life log in front of you. You should have the life map in front of you as well. Let's start with the day in the life log. What I'd like for you to do is, and if you're listening on the podcast, ideally you still have it in front of you, either on a Google Doc, Word doc, or on paper. Have that out. Number 1, reflect on your actions during the week, aka your life. Overall, how do you feel about your day? Like, now that you've taken time to actually like consciously think about what your day consists of, and maybe even like the needs, the shoulds, the wants, like, how do you feel about it? Do you feel good? Like, you're like, I'm pretty satisfied with what my day looks like. Or after looking at your day, you're like, geez, I really don't do as much as I want. Like, I don't have a lot of time for what I want. It's just a lot of things that I need to or should do. Or maybe you are looking back, you're like, I'm not doing what I should be doing. And I'm actually doing a lot of what I want to be doing, which like can be good, but like I should be working out. And I realized like through this week, like I don't actually do that. And depending on how detailed you were, like looking at your work day, you're like, I'm not that productive actually. Or maybe like I don't get any breaks. Maybe the only break I get at work is to poop, which we all poop, so that's fine. But like, is that what you? I don't know. Like, how do you feel about that? It's a very simple. You could do like a smiley face, regular face, frowny face. You could do like a check plus, check minus, a 1 through 10. How do you feel about your day? And essentially, your life, because this is most of your life. And if you did the weekend as well, that's also awesome. Overall, how do you feel? And then for each chapter or section of the day, how do you feel about your actions and that time of the day? So, how do you feel about your morning? Because like, you could say like, overall, I feel pretty good about my day, but like the day is made up of a bunch of different parts, right? So like, what's a good time of the day for you? What's a part of the day where like, I like this is going well for me. This is something that's good for me or good to me, versus like, let's say like your morning. I don't like my mornings. Like, I don't feel good about my mornings. I feel rushed. I feel tired. I feel scrambled. I feel whatever. How do you feel about each section? The morning, your time at work, how do you feel about it? The afternoon, when you get home from work, the evening before bed. So you should already know like what you do and when you do it. You've already empathized with yourself. And this is still empathizing, but we're getting into like the defined part, where it's like, all right, well, what is worth addressing? So now that I have an idea, like, okay, I want to make my life better. Well, it's like, okay, well, how do I feel about certain things? And like you're going to start to be able to zero in on like, okay, well, maybe my morning, I don't feel great about it. And after looking at it, like, yeah, that's not the best that it could be, which if we have growth mindset, which we should, you should believe that like anything can be improved. So that's the goal, right? Second thing I want you to do, and I'm going to pull this up just for you to look at. So if you're on the podcast and you're just listening, I will try to describe it as best as possible. If you're on YouTube, what's up? I'm going to show you, and I'm going to try to describe it to you. And if you have it on a Google Doc, cool. If you have it on paper, like you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. It's just a similar premise. You can use Post-it notes. It doesn't matter. For each chapter, in a sentence or two, I want for you to define what an ideal morning, afternoon, work day, whatever, insert the chapter. Define what an ideal chapter looks or feels like for you. So we're getting into defining. And this is the strength of putting things in words. If I were to say, what does a good morning look or feel like for you? So think about, after your morning, as you're going to work, you're like, that was nice. Okay, like, in a sentence or two. So this is not like describe, like, well, usually it's like 75 degrees. Like, and it doesn't even have to be like, I wake up at 5:30. It can be something like this. And this is just an example of what I have. I'm hoping the camera quality is better. I know someone commented that it was a little blurry. I don't know why. I tried to mess around with the settings I'm using Streamlabs. I'm hoping that it's better. I'm going to be bummed out if it's not. But what is a good morning for me? And what I want to start my day with quiet time and reflection, but also be proactive and effective. So like a good morning to me is like, okay, I get time to like sit, breathe, drink coffee, but I want to get after it. Notice that I didn't say any specific actions necessarily. I didn't say I want to work out, I want to meditate, whatever. I just said I want to have quiet time and reflection. I want to be able to do that, but I also want it to be proactive and effective. That's what I want out of a morning. That's a good morning to me. That doesn't have to be for you. It could be like, I want to get be as well rested as possible. Whatever. I want to eat a good meal. I don't know. Whatever that means for you. And I'll pull up this prompt again. In a sentence or two, define what an ideal chapter looks like or feels like for you. So I'm just going to go through examples of mine. So my morning, I want to start the day with quiet time and reflection, but also be proactive and effective. My morning commute is I want to take time to think and mentally prepare for the storm that I call teaching the puberty humans. So the day is chaotic. So I like for my commute, I'm just like, all right, I'm mentally getting in the zone. I'm thinking, like I'm warming the brain up. For my work day, I want to be an effective and productive teacher and have time to prepare, improve, but also have fun and enjoy my time with students and coworkers. So a good work day for me is where I'm being effective at what I'm doing. I have time to prepare, but I'm also having fun. Like the social aspect. I do care about the social aspect. The commute home is different than the commute to work. By the time I'm going home, between 3 to 3:45, what I want for that is to get home as quick as possible and to let my mind cool down. Like I don't want to be thinking deeply about anything for when I'm on my way home. I just want to get home. I want to zone out, and I just like I need to relax. I need to stop thinking. The afternoon, I want to be able to breathe after a day of work and experience intentional time with the family or myself. So that could mean a whole lot of things. And that's when we get to the ideate phase. This is just so you can gain insight. When we get to the ideate phase, that's going to be like, okay, well, if that's what I want, what are the things that I could do to reach that? If I want to be able to breathe after a day of work and then experience intentional time with the family or myself, what are the things I could possibly do that will allow me to experience intentional time with the family or myself? But we're not there yet. Right now, we're just defining. Slow the roll. 4 hours. If you got 6 hours to chop down a tree, spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Last thing for evening, to proactively conclude the day with reflection, relaxation, and preparation for the next day. So, you don't have to do this right now too. Like this is just, I'm giving you insight and you have the whole week to think about this stuff. So like, don't rush it. But for each chapter, in a sentence or two, define what an ideal chapter looks or feels like for you. Excuse me. You could view it or word it as, I want to blank. So I want to, and then go. Or a good morning would be blank. However it fit, like if you need a template, I want to, it would be nice if a good evening, the perfect evening would be however you want to word it. It doesn't have to be precise. So like notice there were few actions I actually said. I didn't say anything about working out. But I did say I want to be proactive. And notice, I will go back to this. So for my afternoon, the goal was like theoretically, because I didn't do it. If you notice, work out. 2 out of 5 days of the week, I worked out. But when I'm looking at what I actually want for the afternoon, I want to be able to breathe and experience intentional time with the family or myself. So I'm like, now I'm starting to think like, all right, this concept of working out after work doesn't really fit with what I want because I don't want to do that. I don't want to work out after work. I want to relax and like do something fun. And like maybe like perhaps I could, thinking into the future, like, okay, well, maybe the workout could be intentional time with Kendra. Like we work out together. But looking at this, like, that doesn't really match up. And then looking at, like, prepping dinner. Okay, I have to prep dinner. Like, Kendra and or I, or just her, have to make dinner. This is the design thinking mindset. Can I use dinner as a way to experience intentional time? Right? Like, okay, what do I want? What am I doing? Is there any connection? Is there anything that doesn't connect? And is there anything I should replace then? That's when we get into habits and like research on habits, that's what we're going to be thinking about. But for now, you're just defining what do you want? What is ideal? Okay. Please pull out your life map now as I sip the coffee. Okay. Hopefully, I'll pull up my life map. I'll pull up this one. You, is it going to zoom? No, it's not going to zoom. Hopefully you broke your life down into chunks and sections. Now I regret, I don't want to be doing that. Excuse me. Career, relationships, health, hobbies. And then you broke it down into categories, subcategories. I already talked about this, but like flexibility, strength, cardio, this is what I do. So this is what the life map looks like. The next thing that you're going to be doing is two things. And this is for the define phase. So we're thinking about what do you do, how you feel about it, how are you doing, and then what do you want to improve. Give yourself a grade. So for each category and or subcategory, you're going to give yourself a grade, A through F, on how you are currently doing at it. It's not, there's two distinctions. There's how you're doing and then what's a priority for you. So I'm going to describe both and then go through, start with the grade, then do priority. The grades A through F, whatever criteria, like you can think somewhat deeply about this, but it's just like, all right, well, how am I doing at running? Like, all right, well, I'm not, or I do it once a month. So it's not an F, so it's a D, right? Or like, oh, I'm running every day. So that would be an A. Whatever it means for you, just give yourself a grade. Set your priorities as well. So for each category and subcategory, define how important this is to you. You're going to give it a 1, a 2, or a 3. So let's say, and I'm going to show you an example, but let's say like running. How important is running to you? Like it's a part of your life in the sense of like, well, technically I do it. Maybe, or your health. Maybe your spiritual, your mental health. Like how important is that to you? If it's not important at all, it's like, I mean, like I don't really care. It's just a thing I either need to do or like it's there, but I don't really care about it. Give it a 1. A 2 is like, I value this. Like this is important to me. Give it a 2 and give it a 3 if like this is the most important thing to me. This is what I value. Like I do not want this out of my life, and I will never want this out of my life. Like this is what I value. You can't give everything a 3. You can give more than one thing a 3. I'm going to talk about the purpose in a second, but if looking at my map, you'll notice, so for each thing, so like I'm looking at career, and under career, that's the category. The subcategories were like TikTok, professional development, grading, lesson planning, class management, organization. I have to give myself a grade for organization. I'd probably give myself, a B-. Give yourself a grade. So how am I doing at grading? How am I doing at lesson planning? How am I doing at classroom management? How am I doing at being organized? Give myself a grade. Looking at health. How am I doing at my spiritual health? And then like looking at, and you could go about this two ways, whatever makes the most sense for you. Like looking at mine under fitness, I could give myself an overall grade, or I could break it down to like, okay, cardio, I'd give myself a C. I mean, looking at running, I gave myself a C for running, and for skating, I gave myself a D because I'm not doing it a whole bunch. Strength, so like upper body and lower body strength, despite what people looking at me because I look like a skinny, frail guy. I mean, I certainly am skinny. I'm trying to develop more strength. So I gave myself a B for upper body, a C for lower body, and I'm like, I went through the design thinking mindset to recognize like I need to improve my lower body. We'll get to that. Flexibility. Notice that I have 5x5 and yoga. I just gave myself a grade for flexibility, like a D. Going all the way through. I didn't want to do relationships, but like your relationships with your in-laws, your relationships with your parents, your brother, or being an uncle, or my wife. Like how am I doing at that? Once you've given yourself a grade, you can be as harsh as you want on yourself. This is all for becoming better. So this isn't like a absolutely destroy yourself and then feel hopeless. And this is not lying to yourself like A++ for everything. This is dope. Life is great. I'm killing it. Then you're going to set a priority. So the 1, the 2, or the 3. So looking at, let's just go with health. So like cardio, skating, I gave myself a D, but it's not a priority. Like it's just kind of something, it's a fun idea for me to like maybe work out from time to time. So it's a 1. So I gave myself a D. I'm not doing that well at it, but I also don't really care. Running, I'm okay, and that's more important to me. So like if I am actually going to try to like work on cardio, perhaps running. I don't know. Or like how important is cardio to me versus strength? Like what are they equally important? Is one more important than the other? So if like right now strength would be, I guess a 3, and then cardio would be a 2 or a 2-1, but like strength is more important to me. So like upper body and lower body, I've recognized like that is what I want to work on right now. My flexibility. So this is the point. And I'm just using myself as an example, but looking at yours, like my flexibility, I gave myself a D because I cannot touch my toes. I like from time to time throughout my life, I can touch my toes. It's rare. I'm terrible at flexibility, and it's a 3. So let's think about what's happening right now. By doing this activity, you should be able to identify areas in your life in which you're not doing as well as you want to be doing, or you're not doing that well, and what is a priority. So if you have a low grade but high priority, that might be something that you want to hone in on. So like, in regards to strength, I'm doing okay. I'm not giving myself an A. I'm doing all right. Flexibility, I'm not. And that's important to me. So if like time is energy and mental energy, like sweat equity, how much time do I want to put into like focusing on improvements? Flexibility is something that I should hone in on. So the point of going through the concept map or this life map is to figure out what is worth addressing. Do I have a low grade in, but is a high priority? For instance, skating, or let's say, I don't know, like I'm looking at reading. I'm not doing great at it, but it's really not that important to me. Like this isn't something that's worth my time to like seek to get better at. Now I know. Why is this helpful? When you have the map in front of you, it's like going hiking or going while you're driving. Like when you're on ground level and you just see what's in front of you, it's more difficult to navigate. But when you can zoom out, like step out, look overhead and like look down and like see destinations you want to go through or like where you're at. And in this instance, it's what are you doing? That's certainly beneficial. Like I don't have any research behind that, but like that has to be beneficial. To be able to break your life down and then look through and say like, okay, how am I doing in all of this? And what's important to me? So like, not to, this is right. Like this has to be right in my mind. Like doing this has to be more beneficial than not doing it. And if you want to be better and if you want to improve, this makes sense to do it. If you don't care, like if improving yourself is a low priority, then don't worry about this. But if you're truly trying to get better, this is something that is definitely beneficial. And you should do it. Like, someone commented on my TikTok, they're like, because I did a thing essentially of like, what are we doing with our time? Essentially the pitch that I gave the first episode. Like, if all you have is time, what are you doing with it? And then someone's like, well, what are you doing with your time? And I haven't responded. The only reason I would respond would be to talk about this. It would not be like, well, look at all the things that I do. But I for sure have looked at this, and then this has been very helpful for me of like, I'm not doing a good job staying in contact with my friends. I'm not being a good friend. And it is important to me. I want to be a good friend, but I'm not. So now I know, like, okay, dude, like, we get to the next phase, like, what could you do to be a better friend? But, like, this helps for me to recognize, like, I'm taking a step out of my day-to-day existence and just thinking about, what am I doing? How am I doing? And, like, how do I feel about what I'm doing? Okay. You are then going to, and I would go back on a doc, either like writing it out or typing it out on the back of your map. It doesn't really matter. Define what optimal insert category looks or feels like. So similar to the day in the life log. So like define what an ideal chapter looks or feels like. What does, and I'm going to, again, pull up an example. Excuse me. I broke it down into career, hobbies, leisure, relationships, health. And for career, lesson planning, grading, professional development, TikTok, classroom management. Those are the different things in my career. The different hobbies or things I do for leisure, the different relationships, the different health. And even like, let's say friends, I could do like my Harrisburg, my New Jersey, and my college friends. Like, what does an ideal, I don't know, let's say grading. What's like, okay, if I have to think about like, all right, if grading was going well for me and it was good and I was happy with it, what do I want? Put it in a sentence. So for grading, I'm in all caps, but it would be something along the lines of like to be able to quickly and effectively grade and give feedback and not have the pile be too large. So like what's an A then? Is to be able to do it like I'm not spending forever. Ideally that means like setting chunks of time where I can like crush it out. And I can be effective in grading. So I'm not like A, this looks bad, C, like I'm actually doing a good job. Giving feedback, the pile's not getting too big. That's what good grading looks like to me. That's like, I would feel good about that. Go through. So like my relationship with my family. What does an A look like? Define it. Just put it into words. Why do that? It's the same thing for what I do with my students. Sometimes I have them do just like a half-page reflection where they have to type out, like, just give me a thought and then expand on it. And by typing it out and putting it into words, you just have to think a little bit more. You're just like, okay, well, like if I have to talk about this for 2 minutes, then I have to think about it like 3 steps forward. Like, okay, this is the thought, and then what do I think about that, right? So like, just put it into words. For all of this stuff, what is an A in blank? And it might be like grading for me. A isn't like, A is not me loving grading. A is getting grading out of the way and like just being as efficient as possible in my grading. That's good, where I'm like not spending too much time on grading, because grading is not fun. What's fun is the lesson. Like what's an A for me for like giving or making good lessons, right? What's an A for me for my music? What's an A for me for my outdoor life? What's an A for me when I'm learning? So for you obviously, unless you're a teacher, your career or even your categories and subcategories look different. What looks good for you? So be thinking about whatever your category or subcategories are, what is an A? That's defining what the optimal blank looks or feels like. Okay. Again, this is something that you shouldn't be doing this just in 5 minutes. This is like thinking about it. So like maybe each day this week, just pick a different category and go through and just think about it and spend like 10 minutes per category a day. Whatever makes sense for you, again. But we're going to now reflect and define. So based on your life map, is there anything in your life that you are not doing as well as you could and it is important to you? You are going to pick one thing. So by the end of this week, going into next week, if you're following along, but before you go to the next episode or class, you should pick one thing that you want to improve. It should not be, let's not do like, you're realizing like there's so much stuff that could be better, because that's true. As I said before, like you're not perfect and there's not just one thing. Like you could be better at a lot of things. Pick one. Ideally, I guess there's 2 ways of looking at it. Something that would be a quick, easy fix that you care about, or something that's like, this is big, like as in it's a priority to me and I'm not doing well. So again, it could be like, I have a C in this. I want to move it up to a B, whatever that means to you. Or I have an F and I have to make changes. What's one thing? For me, it could be my relationship with my friends. It could be flexibility. It could be meditation. It could be grading. And then you're going to define, what do you need, should, and or want to happen? Putting into words, we are not getting to the point where we're coming up with ideas. So let's say the easy one that I think people can relate to is just physical health. You're not saying necessarily I'm going to bench 225 pounds. Perhaps you're looking at your physical health and you're saying, I want to be in better shape. I want to make exercise a more relevant aspect in my life. That's what you need, should, or want to happen. I want to work out more. We are not getting into the ideate and prototype stage yet. We will. This is the whole 6 hours, 4 hour thing. Just pick a topic and just what's your direction with it? So for me, flexibility, I just want to become more flexible. And I want to make stretching a daily part of my life, really. I want to become more flexible and make stretching a daily part of my life. I want to be in better touch with my college or high school friends. Little things. So, by the end of this week, you should have reflected on a few things, and you should be essentially define what's important to you, define areas in which you want to improve, and then define what you want from that area, and then you're going to pick one. Last thing, and this is just getting us to think about the philosophy of change. This is from Atomic Habits by James Clear. I would 100% recommend it. I'm going to be using it in this series because I'm trying to teach and connect human habits to the design process. So Atomic Habits and then the Power of Habits. But in Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the 3 levels in which change can occur. Changing your outcomes. So the results, you can change how much you're benching. You can change the process. So your habits and the system that you have in place to get the results. Or you changing your identity, as in what you believe. And the goal is to align your behavior with your identity. So you got to think optimistically here. If you were optimally performing at an optimal level as a friend, what do you want? As a husband, what do you want? Start to think about your identity. How do you want to identify in regards to fitness, in regards to career, in regards to your life outside of work, in regards to your relationships? Who do you want to be? That's the foundation, right? That's if you change, and this comes from the book, align your behavior with your identity. That's how you prove if you're really, if you could say oh, I'm a nice person, but how are you? Well, I'm a good friend. Okay, well, what are you doing? And that was the point of us looking at well, what am I doing? Because that tells us who we are. So start to think about define what you want. What looks good, as in this I would be happy with this. Here's an example of just this mindset of your identity and how it, and I'm going to dive much deeper into this, but just as a little teaser. If you used to smoke cigarettes and someone offered you a cigarette, you could respond in 2 different ways, and the implications behind that do change or impact your behaviors. If someone offers you a cigarette and you used to smoke, you could say either, no thanks, I'm trying to quit, or no thanks, I'm not a smoker. You used to be a smoker, but now you're in your mind, I'm not someone who smokes. You've defined that. And by having that mentality, like, no thanks, I'm not a smoker, that increases the likelihood that you're not going to take the cigarette because you don't identify as someone who smokes. When you say, like, no thanks, I'm trying to quit, that opens up the possibility, like, well, I'm trying, which, like, you are. But when you identify in a certain way, it leads to the increased likelihood that your behavior will also change. So think about, like, how do you identify in your career or in your relationships or for your fitness or for hobbies? Who are you? Cool. The next step is ideate. And we're going to be, so you should come ready next series or next episode or class with your topic. I would really recommend you write it down as well. So, like, I have under the same area where, like, what does an A look like for the different categories or subcategories? Then say the topic. I'm going to come to class next week with one for me, and I'm going to go through, like, I'm literally going to design a plan for myself. Like, we're going to get to the point where we're doing a prototype. But next week, we're going to be thinking about what could you do to reach your desired improvement. So if it's like, I want to be a better friend, like, okay, what are all of the things that would technically get you closer? Some are better than others. Some are, like, more impactful than others. But what are all of the things that you could do to reach your desired improvement? And then what should you do? So it's creative thinking and critical thinking. Creative thinking is like, you got a paper clip, and, like, when they ask kindergartners, like, what are all the things you could do with this paper clip? And they can think of, like, 100 different things. And then they tend to ask adults, and adults can average, like, 7. Open up the creative part of your mind, like, embrace ambiguity, like, anything, literally anything that could help you reach your desired improvement technically. And then the critical thinking is, okay, well, what's a good idea? And then when we get to the prototype phase, it's going to be, okay, well, what am I going to do? When am I going to do it? That's where the habit starts to come in. We're going to think about, like, okay, how can you make a habit out of, it's developing the system. How can you set up a system which increases the likelihood that you're going to reach your desired goal? But that's for future us to worry about. This week, you need to go through and do 2 things. Reflect on your actions during the week. Overall, how do you feel? And then for each chapter, how do you feel about your actions? And then in a sentence or 2 for each chapter, define what an ideal chapter looks or feels like for you. And then you're going to reflect on the life map. So you're going to give yourself a grade. You're going to assess priority. Go back through and define what an optimal blank looks like or feels like. And then pick one thing and define what you need, should, or want to happen. I'll see y'all next week or whenever I see you, if I see you. Ooh! What I'd like for you to do, what I think would be cool, if you're still with me, is I hope, number one, if this is something that's actually starting to interest you, I feel like ideally it's, like, just starting to pick up and, like, become a reality. Tell someone. That would be really cool. But also, let's share our progress. So once you have picked something and once you've defined what you need, should, or want to happen, put it in the comment section. This is not like the more comments I get, the more money I get. I'm not making any money off of this, but sharing is good. It's like the accountability buddies is what I call for my students. Like, telling someone and speaking it out and, like, sharing it to others does actually increase the likelihood that you're going to do it. We don't necessarily know each other, so you should also tell people, like, that you know. You should, like, hey, by the way, this is something that I want to get better at. I want to learn more. I want to develop a hobby, something. But put it in the comment section. Again, any questions or thoughts, put it in the comment section. Any feedback. Someone said, the only comment I got last video was that the video quality was a little shaky. So I'm hoping that this is better. I'm going to be bummed if it's not, because I went through and tried to figure that out. I will design improvements. All right. homework, reflect on your life, assess on your life, and then share. And I will see